I think there is a real risk, at least for some cases. And really just taking a step back, the root of all this is that there's been consensus, I think, among regulators for several years now that in the past 2 decades, merger control authorities around the world regularly got the difficult analysis in a merger context in digital markets in particular wrong. And they let many problematic mergers evade review or intervention. And kind of the poster child that's often used for that is Facebook's acquisition of Instagram, which was reviewed by the UK Competition and Markets Authority at the time and was cleared unconditionally. And so in response, in more recent years, authorities have been looking for ways to review and intervene in more tech deals. Um, and while there's significant alignment among those different global regulators about the specific types of competitive harms that can arise in tech deals, there really remains outcome critical divergence on both substance and remedies. And we've seen that in the year just gone by in a number of cases. The big kind of ones to call out probably are 2023 proved fatal for Booking.com's attempted acquisition of eTravely. There's an appeal pending on that before the courts in Europe. The CMA had cleared that deal unconditionally in phase one, but the European Commission blocked it. So we're seeing regulatory divergence there where it's difficult to predict where the regulators will go. And we're also seeing remedies divergence. And again, the big case that happened in the year just gone is the Microsoft Activision deal looked to be about to be derailed by the CMA, who prohibited the deal initially, before they made an unprecedented turnaround and cleared a new version of the deal. And so I think that risk of divergence is going to continue in 2024. But probably it's also worth putting things in perspective a bit, that regulators actually tend to agree on the vast majority of cases. But I think for some of these big kind of cutting edge cases with difficult theories of harm in tech markets, that's where we still will see a real risk of divergence.
I agree that there is continuing risk for deals. On the substantive side, I think the agencies are more aligned, and you're seeing in practice quite a bit of coordination between the agencies, particularly the U.S. and the U.K. In the U.S., that is tempered to some extent by the courts in a way that administratively you don't see in some other jurisdictions where there may be more discretion afforded to the agencies. So you're seeing a process where the US enforcers are taking an enforcement decision that may be aligned with other jurisdictions, but may have difficulty in blocking the deal in court or in the FTC's administrative proceedings. So you're seeing some uncertainty, maybe not overall divergence in policy, but some divergence in the ultimate outcomes and some divergence in the timelines for achieving those outcomes. I think the biggest development in the US has been the release the end of last year of new merger guidelines, which really crystallize the agency's approach to digital markets in particular. I'd say they're largely aspirational. On one side, companies have been asking for clear rules of deals that are safe. The guidelines provide a lot more color on what the agencies view as presumptively harmful. For large companies making transactions, you'll see the agencies trying to take a more aggressive approach on that front. They also encapsulate what the agency's been viewing in terms of new theories of harm, whether that is potential competition, nascent competition, or ecosystem theories involving platforms acquiring businesses that aren't strictly inputs or strictly competitors, but have a competitive effect. I think we'll see the agencies really looking for test cases in the next year or so to put those theories to work. And it'll be very interesting to see how those interplay with the approaches taken by other regulators.
Noting from kind of an EU and UK perspective, which I think we're going to talk a bit in a while about kind of platform regulation, but that also has a merger control kind of nexus, because there's now obligations kicking in on the largest platforms under the Digital Markets Act in Europe and the equivalent that will come into force in the UK, the Digital Markets Competition and Consumer Bill. And that places obligations on the gatekeepers or the large tech platforms to inform the Commission and or the CMA about any of their planned acquisitions. So kind of any deals that might have flown under the radar previously, which is actually quite rare, I think, will no longer do so. And the Commission has already been notified of some acquisitions by the gatekeepers.
Speaking of EU and the US, and the UK so far, obviously jurisdictions around the world are keenly focused on digital markets and applying similar considerations, both to global deals and to deals involving their own local champions. So I think there's potential for both convergence and divergence there. There are certainly jurisdictions like China, which have both very different market structures when it comes to tech and prioritize certain theories of harm, particularly, for example, ensuring security of supply for China for global deals. I think there you do see fairly significant potential for divergence that needs to be managed carefully. Maybe not entirely opposed to each other, but something that needs to be managed as local considerations.